they can count on me as a member of the United States Congress to fight again for human space exploration. Thank you, Neil Armstrong, an American hero. May you rest in peace. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, this is not what economic recovery looks like. Last Friday's painful jobs report showed for every one American job that was created, 4 people simply exited the labor force. In fact, the percentage of Americans participating in the labor force today is lower than it has been at any time since September 1981. Mr. Speaker, this is a national crisis. Over 23 million Americans remain unemployed, underemployed, or have simply given up looking for work. Our nation's GDP growth was lower in this year's second quarter than the first. The average monthly jobs created is less this year than last. Washington has tried trillion-dollar stimulus, 4 straight years of trillion-dollar deficits, yet unemployment has remained above 8% for over 43 consecutive months. And American people are honestly asking themselves, am I better off today than I was $6 trillion ago? Mr. Speaker, we need to work together to empower businesses to create jobs and grow our economy, which is why I've introduced a bipartisan, bicameral jobs bill, the Global Investment in American Jobs Act. This isn't about politics. It's about the millions of Americans who are unemployed and seeking opportunities for a better future.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking in favor today of granting Russia permanent normal trade relations. I'd like to emphasize this will hold only benefits for the United States. There is no downside for us unless we fail to act. While we wait to consider this legislation, our global competitors are racing ahead, taking advantage of their new access to Russian markets. U.S. exports to Russia could double in the next 5 years. Currently, exports to Russia support over 1,400 jobs in my state. Passing this bill will increase America's export goods and services substantially, and this growth in trade will serve as a no-cost job creator. If we fail to act, U.S. companies, farmers, and workers will not receive the benefits of Russia's membership, nor will the U.S. government have authority to hold Russia accountable under WTO rules. Mr. Speaker, it is my sincere hope that we can come together and pass this legislation, grant Russia permanent normal trade relations. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the Chair leaves before the House these personal requests.
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Heinrich of New Mexico for today, Ms. Evie Johnson of Texas for today, and Mr. Jones of North Carolina for today after 11:40 a.m.
Without objection, requests are granted. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Moran, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, next week, following Senate action on a 6-month continuing resolution to keep the federal government funded until March 27th of 2013, Congress is likely to adjourn until after the fall elections. Really? Seriously? In other words, over the next 53 days before the election, this House will be in session about 1 3/4 days. It's a sad state of affairs. And the best that this House can do is to punt all spending decisions on this year's budget to the next Congress. But that's what we just did this week. Before we adjourn, there will be no resolution on the budget. There will be no resolution on the sequester, $1.2 trillion that is causing disruption throughout the country and particularly among the entire federal government, especially the defense industry, which will have to absorb half of that sequester. Could affect directly about 1 million jobs, almost 2 million jobs indirectly, but we're not going to do anything about it. There'll be no resolution on tens of billions of dollars of expiring tax measures before the election. We'll do nothing on the Farm Bill. We'll do nothing on postal reform. We'll do nothing on dozens of other important issues for which the public is counting on us to do something. The most basic and fundamental responsibilities our constituents sent us to Washington to address are being left unresolved. I proudly served in this institution for more than 20 years. Never have I seen this House so unproductive and so dysfunctional. And I served during the so-called Gingrich Revolution. I served during Mr. Clinton's administration and during Mr. Bush's administration. But this House has never been less functional. Our nation is suffering from high unemployment and the residual effects of the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. Of course, our current situation is a result of 2 deep tax cuts in 2001 and 2003, which primarily benefited those who needed tax cuts the least. 2 wars, neither of which were ever paid for, and an expansion of Medicare, which was not paid for. That's what put us in this deep hole, plus the fact that we deregulated the financial industry. And so the American people whose median income, the working class Americans, didn't go up. In fact, it edged downward, so they had less disposable money. They borrowed from the one asset they had, which had been appreciating, real estate, their home, and they borrowed on their credit cards. And now, after the economy imploded, their home values declined. In fact, almost 70% of African-American families lost, African-American families lost almost 70% of their household wealth. Hispanic Americans, over 60%. White Americans lost more than 16% of their household wealth. They obviously don't have the money to be spending again. They've learned their lesson. They're not going to keep borrowing. Their home values are down, so they can't borrow as much off their real estate. So you don't get those calls, those cold calls from people suggesting that you can borrow more money off your home and consolidate your credit cards. They're not coming. People aren't borrowing. And it's understandable. And that's why our economy is in such a deep recession. Why it's so difficult to pull out of it. Now, Mr. Hoyer pointed out that we tried something different in the 1990s from what we tried in the first decade of the 21st century. When President Clinton balanced the federal budget, those who were in the House majority now all voted against it. In fact, every Republican voted against it. It's a pure party line vote. The deciding vote was cast by a freshman member from Pennsylvania who lost her seat as a result, but it passed. We have some empirical evidence as to what happened. I remember during the debate, it was suggested that if this passed, that in fact we would see deep unemployment, we'd go into a recession, millions of people would be out of their jobs, that it was the wrong thing to do. I remember the words of Mr. Gingrich and Mr. Armey and others. Well, we have empirical evidence, as I say. We know exactly what did happen. We did raise taxes on the people at the top, raised it up to 39.6%. And those folks in the top tax bracket actually brought home more after-tax income than any other time in American history. But everyone was better off. About 22 million new jobs were created. That number seems as though it's in a different world today when we struggle so hard to create jobs, but just think of all the job creation. We experienced one of the lowest levels of poverty. The rising tide lifted all boats. It worked. But beyond a strong economy, and to some extent because of that strong economy, we were able to get control over the federal deficit. And in fact, for the last 3 years of the Clinton administration, we had a surplus. Mr. Gore was derisively scorned for talking about the lockbox. But the lockbox was all about putting some of that surplus aside to pay for the retirement and health costs of the baby boom generation. I'm a member of that baby boom generation. We haven't all retired, but there's more than 70 million of us. Many of us feel we should pay for our own expenses, and that would have enabled us to do so. But that wasn't what happened. Mr. Gore lost the election, or at least I guess I should say, rather than Mr. Bush being elected, the Supreme Court selected him, but it's done. And we took a very different course of action. The $5.6 trillion surplus that was projected at the end of the Clinton administration was almost immediately lost with two very deep tax cuts that, as I say, did not benefit the middle class. They benefited people who needed them the least. Then we declared 2 wars. You really can't have, you certainly can't pay for 2 wars with 2 deep tax cuts. We expanded Medicare. Cost a lot more than it should have, I think, because we put a provision in that forbid the federal government from negotiating with the drug providers in order to get the lowest rate for Medicare beneficiaries, using the leverage of the federal government. We couldn't do that. We had to pay retail prices. And so the Veterans Administration, which can negotiate, can use the leverage of such a large pool of buyers, they pay a fraction of the price that we pay under the Part D program of Medicare. But all that was done. It made people happy temporarily. The term sugar high was used. Well, this was kind of a fiscal sugar high. And now we're paying the price. Now we're paying the price. The fiscal policy that didn't work. And as I say, we have empirical evidence that it did not work. Question is, where do we go from here? Now, we hear from the other side what sounds a lot like a campaign of about 12 years ago More tax cuts is the answer. We're hearing a lot of bellicose rhetoric about getting re-engaged militarily in the Middle East after finally concluding the Iraq War. We're talking about military involvement with Iran. We're talking about deregulation, of repealing Dodd-Frank regulations on the financial industry, repealing the Affordable Care Act, even though this country spends twice as much per person on health care, and yet we don't live as long and we're not as healthy as other countries that spend half what we spend. Reason is that we pay for the quantity of services provided, almost regardless of the quality of the care that we're paying for. The Affordable Care Act is all about reversing that, about using best practices, about reimbursing hospitals and doctors and other health care providers based upon how effective their treatments, their analyses, their procedures are in making the patient well. We reward best practices, and in fact we're going to reduce reimbursement for hospitals that keep seeing the same patient over and over again for the same illness. People get infections actually in the hospital, and for any number of other reasons that drive up the cost of health care in this country, but that other countries have resolved more efficiently, effectively, and in the better interest of the patient. So we're going to try to turn that around while we include everyone and while we make everyone pay in the same way that we do with Social Security and Medicare. You pay in advance when you're young and healthy so that you'll have insurance when you're older and sicker. That's the whole idea. That's what the individual mandate is all about. Simply makes sense. It made sense in Massachusetts when Mr. Romney was governor there. It's working there. People are happy with it. We ought to apply it here and certainly not repeal it. But yet that's what we're hearing. Repeal regulations, repeal the Affordable Care Act, more tax cuts, and more bellicose rhetoric. I think that's what got us in much of this situation in the first place. On the other side, the President understands that while we're certainly not losing 800,000 jobs a month as we were at the end of the Bush administration, the glass is at least half full. We ought not drain it so that it's empty again, but we ought to build on our successes. Now, if we're going to build on those successes, regardless of who's elected president, the legislative branch needs to do its job. And that's why it's so troubling that with all the things that need to be done now, today, over the next 53 days, members of Congress are going to be nowhere in sight, at least certainly not up on Capitol Hill doing the public's business. We'll be out in our districts politicking, seeking votes. It's going to be a tough record to run on. Now, we can go back in history and compare what we're doing now and with the past. I do think it's informative. It suggests that this is not just unfounded political rhetoric suggesting that this is a dysfunctional, do-nothing Congress. We have empirical evidence. We have facts. We have statistics. In fact, in Roll Call magazine, I want to give them credit for this, page B9, yesterday, September 13th, the headline is, "Congress on Pace to be Least Productive." they have a chart. I asked the very good people that support our work, which I hope will get a break over the next 53 days. At least that's something positive. But they have blown up this chart. I'll read it because the title is A Dubious Historical Distinction. From high water marks in the 1950s, remember the 1950s? That was when we passed the GI Bill that put our returning veterans to work, got them higher education, enabled them to buy a home, really created the middle class. Thanks to Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, and Dwight Eisenhower. And then Dwight Eisenhower followed up by building the interstate highway system, laying down physical infrastructure in this country, employing hundreds of thousands of people in the process. Imagine what we would be without an interstate highway system, the number of towns and communities who would have been marginalized in our economy without an opportunity to be on a road that led from one place to another, and that you could stop and you could buy something and you could stay overnight and you could decide, well, this is a nice town. They want to put roots down here. But you only do that if it's accessible. The interstate highway system made the whole country accessible. But from the 1950s, Congress has passed fewer bills, enacted fewer laws over time. But even compared with recent years, this Congress, the 112th Congress, has shown a remarkable lack of lawmaking activity. Now, this is not some kind of partisan rag. This is roll call, which is clearly bipartisan, nonpartisan. The 112th Congress, this Congress, during its first year, passed the fewest bills since in our lifetimes, the middle of the last century. Look at this. This is public laws enacted. We had a high point up here way back in the 84th Congress, and now look at it. It looks like a ski slope. We've gone from 1,028 laws to 151. In terms of bills passed, in the House, here you go, in the 84th Congress, 4,628 bills. Now, maybe not all of those were of consequence, but at least it shows they were doing something. Here you go, all the way down to this. Now, look at this. In fact, you get it down here to the 100th, and then, boom, you drop off a cliff. Less than 600 bills. 4,628 bills back in the 84th Congress to 598. Less than 600 bills here today in this Congress. And yet, for the next 53 days, we'll be in session for about 1 3/4 days. I don't think that I'm talking about something that it ought not be of concern to everyone. And I'm not exaggerating. This is unbelievable. You know, through the course of the history of this Congress, of this institution, really, that's what I mean to say, because this Congress is not typical, the approaches have oftentimes been different between the two political parties. But Republicans and Democrats in past Congresses have worked across the aisle. We have found common ground. We have enacted legislation when it was needed to stimulate the economy. We have helped the unemployed. We have helped families struggling. We have reached out to the poor, not with handouts, but with a helping hand to create greater opportunity. The outcome is never going to be the same, but people ought to have some sense of equal opportunity, of getting a fair break in this economy. And we've maintained this nation's infrastructure. Today, there's more than $2 trillion of unmaintained infrastructure needs in this country. Roads and bridges and transit and rail and ports. And airports, seaports and airports are going neglected. $2 trillion, millions of jobs. They're all jobs in this country. They're all skilled jobs. They're all jobs that should pay a good wage. And they're all jobs that will pay an investment and a dividend for years to come. They're investments, not expenditures. They're investments. And we'll see the benefit of them for generations to come. And yet we can't even get the American Jobs Act enacted, which is primarily to invest in the physical infrastructure of this country as well as the human infrastructure, putting money into education and research and innovation, into the things that are going to give us a stronger economy, a more stable society, a more inclusive society, a fairer society. That's what the American Jobs Act does, but we can't get it through this body. You know, when Ronald Reagan faced down a recession in the early 1980s, he proudly signed a transportation authorization bill that raised the tax on gasoline in order to maintain our nation's highways and transit systems. And he called it a jobs bill. And Democrats supported it. And it was enacted. And it helped get us out of that recession. It strengthened our economy. And it's still paying dividends for generations to come. Same thing with President Eisenhower with the interstate highway system. When President Obama urged Congress more than a year ago to consider the American Jobs Act, because it was a plan to get Americans back to work by investing in our nation's infrastructure, nonpartisan, apolitical economists estimated that it would create 2.6 million jobs and protect an additional 1.6 million existing jobs. So 4 million jobs were at stake. And yet he was given a cold shoulder, primarily driven by a fairly substantial block of what some people refer to as Tea Party Republicans. Whatever the proper designation, there's an anti-government attitude. I think that the government has a role, particularly in a recession, to get us back on our feet so that the private economy didn't take over. It's not relying on the federal government, but it's looking to the federal government to be there when we need it, to give some, yes, and I'll say the word stimulus, to the private sector. And that's what the American Jobs Act was all about. Today, the House leadership and too many of its rank-and-file members think economic stimulus is a dirty word. In fact, you'd think that the federal government is some kind of alien enterprise. Federal government is us. We should be proud of the federal government. People who work for the federal government are the least corruptible large civil service in the entire world. The fact is that they've consistently been the most effective in dealing with our problems and enabling us to have a more inclusive society and a more prosperous economy. We just had a debate today over the issue that has become the rallying cry for anti-government politicians, Solyndra. Solyndra failed. There's $500 million. The private sector had put $1 billion in. That loan represented some of the less than 2% of failures of that guaranteed loan program. The estimate when it was established was that it would be about a 10% failure rate. It's been about 2%. The private sector saw fit to put $1 billion of its own money in. The Obama administration deferred to the private sector and said, yeah, if you put your money in, we will not take back what money is left if, in fact, they do fail. You get it first. We'll subordinate the government loan. That turned out to be a mistake. It was a preference toward the private sector. I don't think you should argue with the good intent, the reliance upon the private sector, but the public sector, the taxpayers, suffered a loss. And yet, substantial advances have been made in solar power and wind energy. The reason why Solyndra went under is that the Chinese government figured this out, figured out that we can't be so reliant upon fossil fuels, that the future is not with fossil fuels, it's with sustainable forms of clean energy from the sun and from the wind. And so they've already gotten to the point where they can manufacture solar devices that capture the sun, the heat and energy from the sun. In fact, if you go over there, you see that their robots are even more sophisticated than ours. They're likely to put us out of business in that area, too. Their robots go smoothly like that. Ours go like some kind of jerk dance, you know. I can't do it. I can't even dance the whatever they call it. But the fact is, it's herky-jerky motion, many of our robots. Theirs are smooth, very precise, because they knew to invest in that kind of technology, and they're investing in solar panels. So they dumped those solar panels on our economy, and that's why Solyndra went under. We can't lose out to communist countries, to state-owned enterprises. We have to be at the cutting edge. We've got the best schools. We've got the most creative people. Yet China, they've decided over the next decade, 70% of their preschool children from 1 to 5 are going to have at least 3 years of preschool education, as they understand that in the earliest years of a child's life, that's when the brain is most absorbent. They're going to invest in early childhood. And yet, what is our budget? The budget that was passed in the House, obviously the Democratic side voted against it. What does it do? It eliminates 200,000 Head Start slots, cuts money for early childhood education, eliminates child care tax credit. Think about this. Not only does the child care tax credit, and I don't want to digress too much, but 10 million single mothers with small children would go deeper into poverty, but 2 million, that's why I want to focus on 2 million mothers of small children would have to leave the workforce where they're getting paid roughly minimum wage, just enough to support their rent and food on the table. They would be faced with the choice either giving up their job, going on welfare again, or locking their small children in an apartment because they can't afford child care. Is that really who we are as a country? Is that where our priorities are? Is that how we're going to compete in the future with countries like China and countries in Asia and Brazil and India? No, it's not. I trust the American people understand that, but that's all related to this Solyndra mess. The way that it's mischaracterized, the way that reason people don't understand what it's really about. So, again, the House voted no more Solyndras. They rejected the amendment that was made by Mr. Markey that says, you know, if we're going to continue to give $4 billion of tax subsidies to fossil fuel companies that extract oil and gas from publicly owned land owned by the taxpayers, if we're going to continue to give these tax subsidies to the industries who are the wealthiest corporations in the world, many of whom pay no taxes because of these subsidies. If we're going to continue to do that, and while at the same time as this bill that was passed today would take away subsidies for wind and solar power, we should at least reconsider the tax subsidies we give to the industries that need it the least. At least, let's be fair about it, Let's save those billions of dollars every year of subsidies going to the wealthiest corporations for extracting natural resources owned by the American people and then boosting the price of oil at the gas pump. We continue to pay more than we should at the pump, but they're a corporation. They're going to maximize their wealth. They're going to pay the minimum taxes they can get away with. And yet, this body wants to eliminate efforts to come up with clean, sustainable sources of energy comparable to what our competitors in the global economy are doing. I know all that's a digression, but, you know, it's all related. Fact is that the one thing that this Congress has proven it can do is nothing. And for those most dependent upon the federal government's willingness to reach out a helping hand to help them climb ladders of economic opportunity, the attitude of the majority in this Congress has been, you're on your own. Survival of the fittest. Winner take all. That's been the tax policy. That's been the spending policy. As far as I'm concerned, that's not what made this country great. It's what's gotten this country into the economic circumstances that we face today. Now, there's a drought brought on by a changing climate change. People in the House majority want to deny even the existence of climate change, even when it's standing right in front of us, facing us, with all these extreme violent storms, with the fact that this has been the warmest year on record, and yet they want to deny climate change because it's brought about by human action, human decisions, decisions made by groups such as the American Congress to protect the fossil fuel industry, which is the primary contributor to global warming. And as a result, all this warmer weather, these droughts, these violent storms are bringing devastating economic injury to thousands of America's farmers. And what has been the reaction of the House leadership? The Republican majority has chosen to block a farm bill from even being considered on the House floor, even though it passed the Senate with an overwhelming vote, bipartisan vote, and yet we can't bring it up on the House floor. Instead, the House leadership has wasted time on the House floor with legislation designed to dismantle the Affordable Care Act, eliminate the prospect of a more secure and affordable health care for millions of Americans. 3 dozen times we've had votes to repeal the Affordable Care Act, knowing that the Senate understands how important it is to the American people and how important it is in the long run to get a grip on this economy, understanding that our corporations can't continue to pay the kind of money they're having to pay for health care that is less effective than the health care provided by every other industrialized country. The Senate understands it, the House doesn't get it, and so we keep having these votes that pure political posturing. Of course, the House Republican leadership as well has wasted floor time voting to dismantle just about every landmark environmental law, blaming laws passed in the 1970s and 1990s as the cause for today's high unemployment rate. Laws that were passed, many of them in the Nixon administration and the George H.W. Bush administration. Nixon administration created the Environmental Policy Act. And it saved hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives. Children that have not been afflicted with asthma, people who have not gotten the kind of illnesses that they were vulnerable to because we have had cleaner air and water. But now we can't even update it with the latest technology and the latest information. EPA has been the prime target of these budget cuts. And so we now have, I think it's been about 38 individual votes that have been taken to destroy environmental laws and regulations. Those votes, most of them have died in the Senate, fortunately. But is that really what this institution should be all about? And when our children look back on the opportunities that this House of Representatives had to secure a better future for them, be it a pathway toward a balanced budget so they don't have to pay off the debt of their parents and grandparents, or better, more affordable opportunities for their educational advancement, elementary and secondary education assistance so we don't have to lay off hundreds of thousands of teachers. We've laid off almost 250,000 teachers now throughout the country as a result of the recession and the result of local and state legislators not being willing to invest in education, or the Pell Grants, which enable lower-income families who have students who have worked hard to be able to afford college. Those opportunities are being lost, as well as the opportunity to have a cleaner alternative energy future, which would have generated more than 40,000 jobs. And instead, in the effort to eliminate financial help for wind and solar power, we've already cut about 2,000 jobs, and I guess it's closer to 3,000 jobs now, but with the elimination of guaranteed loans, we're looking at nearly 40,000 jobs in an industry that represents the future for our children and grandchildren, that other global competitors are investing in. They will look at this Congress and rightly blame us for not seizing on those opportunities. Disappointment would be an inadequate word to describe the public's proper assessment of this Congress. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not over yet. We'll have a lame duck session. We'll have an election in November. This country will choose which path it wants to go forward. Does it want to revisit the policies the first 8 years of the 21st century? Does it want to look at what happened in the last decade of the 20th century, compare the results, and then assess in which direction we need to be going? The empirical evidence is there. The opportunity will be present on November 6th to choose which path this country will take. It's clear, Mr. Speaker, that the path this Congress has been on, this 112th Congress, is not the path that leads to a better, more prosperous future for our children and grandchildren. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman yields back.
I yield back my time.
Good. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Woodall, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the time. You know, you and I, Madam Speaker, are freshmen in this House, and I've learned a few things about coming down to the floor from watching my colleagues about how to make a good impression. You know, everybody's back in their offices watching the proceedings on TV, or folks back in the district watching it on TV, and I see our colleagues come and they'll take the podium down to the very lowest level so that when they walk up to the podium, they'll be able to drag it all the way up to the top and look big and strong and powerful. You know, in the 18 months that you and I have served here, Madam Speaker, we've gotten a lot of advice about how to look good. We've gotten a lot of advice about how to tell the good story, how to spin the good tale. And as I listened to my friend from Virginia make his presentation earlier, I thought, you know what, he and I are looking at exactly the same set of facts, and we are drawing exactly the opposite set of conclusions. And that makes it so hard to legislate here, Madam Speaker, because you and I, as part of this freshman class, we don't care two hoots about what looks good. What we care about is what is good. We don't care about trying to make people believe it's the truth. We care about actually finding the truth. And that's been the challenge up here in the 18 months that you and I have had a voting card. I have beside me, Madam Speaker, a chart that has been down on this floor a number of times. It's called a choice of two futures, and you've seen it, Madam Speaker. It's the one that shows the red line of current spending promises. It's the one that goes all the way back to 1940, Madam Speaker. It shows debt as a percent of GDP. It shows back at the end of World War II when we were fighting the Nazis, we were fighting the Japanese, we were fighting to defend freedom and democracy around the globe. In the name of ending that World War, we borrowed 100% of our economy. Our national debt grew to 100% the size of our economy. And that was an investment well made, Madam Speaker, having defended the liberty of citizens around the world. But we're right back in that same place today, Madam Speaker. This chart goes from 1940 all the way out to 2080. It's 140 years of past policy and projected policy. And what it shows is that today America is on the verge of carrying that same debt burden. We're not in the middle of a world war to defend freedom and liberty. We're not in the middle of fighting the Nazis and trying to prevent a hostile takeover of the world. But we've borrowed 100% the size of our economy. But that's not even the most damning part of this chart, Madam Speaker. What we see is, represented by this red line, if we do nothing, Madam Speaker, if our freshman class had never come to this town, if we closed the Congress, if we closed the White House, if we never passed a new law and never made a new promise, this red line represents the promises already made. And what we see is debt rising to 200%, 300%, 400%, 500% the size of our economy, levels that economists tell us will never be sustainable. And that's if we don't make one new promise on the floor of this House. My colleague from Virginia spoke passionately about the need for child care in this country, spoke eloquently about families at home struggling to balance the demands of work and the demands of child care. You see it in your district, Madam Speaker. I see it in my district. He's absolutely right about the struggles that every single American family faces. And from his words, believes in his heart that the right way to address those challenges in my small town of Peachtree Corners, Georgia, is with a federal program. A program that comes right down the street here, maybe from the Department of Health and Human Services, maybe from the Department of Education, but that somehow we can create a program here in Washington, D.C. that will be the absolute best and most efficient way to deal with my family's challenges and my neighbor's challenges back in Peachtree Corners, Georgia. Madam Speaker, what I've learned, I serve on the Budget Committee and the Rules Committee, and listening to my colleagues talk, I somehow thought that perhaps there were some dollars here in Washington, D.C. that came from somewhere other than my constituents' pockets. But I've learned that's not the case, that every single dollar that this institution spends, every single commitment that the administration makes, every single project that the Senate wants to fund, every single dollar comes out of the pockets of my constituents back home and your constituents back home, Madam Speaker. So when we talk about, and I think the phrase my friend from Virginia used was the anti-government forces on Capitol Hill. I don't know who those forces are. I feel like he was talking about me and this freshman class. I don't know of any anti-government forces. What I know about are folks who talk about what's the right level of government to get the American taxpayer the absolute best value for their tax dollar. And who are those folks who honestly believe that the best value for their tax dollar back in Peachtree Corners, Georgia, is to take that dollar out of the back pocket of a hardworking taxpayer in Peachtree Corners, move it through the Gwinnett County government, move it up through the state of Georgia government, bring it up here to the federal government, then send it back down to a federal agency that's going to send it back down to a state agency that's going to send it back over to a county government in order to provide child care. Who believes that's the absolute best and most efficient way to spend an American tax dollar? And that's the battle that we have here in this House. It's not about government and anti-government. It's about good government and bad government. You know, we're here in the federal government, Madam Speaker, the federal government, and there are responsibilities that we have. Making war, one of our responsibilities. Defending our border, one of our responsibilities. Maintaining the postal roads, one of our responsibilities. But there are so many other levels of government, state government, county government, local government, that can fulfill some of these needs that my colleagues seem to believe only the federal government is right to fill. And I want to go back to this chart, Madam Speaker. This is the chart of promises already made. So often I pick up the newspaper, Madam Speaker, and it sounds like everybody's just complaining up here in Washington, D.C. It's all about pointing fingers, and it's not about solving problems. And what I am so proud of, in the 18 months you and I have been here under the leadership of some senior members like the gentleman from Indiana, we have not only identified the problem, which is a crushing debt burden that threatens the economic security not just of our children and of our grandchildren, but of our very republic. We've not just identified that problem, we've promulgated a solution. It's represented here on the chart, Madam Speaker, by this green line. It's labeled the path to prosperity. I'm just so proud. I serve on the Budget Committee. My chairman is Paul Ryan. This House came together. You don't hear that a lot on the front page of the newspaper, but this House came together in a bipartisan way to pass a budget not just once, Madam Speaker. We passed it for the first time in 2011, but again in this year, 2012, as we've been waiting on the Senate to act. It's our constitutional obligation to pass that budget each and every year. The President's offered one each and every year. The House has passed one each and every year, but the Senate has failed to act. And we laid out, line item by line item, how we would prevent this most certain destruction of economic liberty and security in our land. It's represented by this green line, Madam Speaker. And that stretches out from 2012 all the way out to 2051. You don't run up trillion-dollar debts like we're running up and solve it overnight. You just can't. You can't run up 100% of your GDP in debt and solve it overnight. We don't have that kind of money. We can't levy that kind of tax burden on the American people. But we can solve it over time. We can keep it from getting worse today, and we can make it better tomorrow. That's what our plan is. And I think that's so important, Madam Speaker, because, again, when I read about it, when I listen to it on the newspaper, it's finger-pointing. It's who's to blame and whose fault is it and why didn't they do better. I don't care whose fault it was. I don't care who got us here. My knowledge of history tells me there's a lot of blame to go around. I care about who's going to get us out of here. Who's going to solve these problems? Who's going to move us from the precipice of economic disaster back to the robust American economy for which we are known around the globe? This House has passed that plan, Madam Speaker, not once, but twice. What I show here, Madam Speaker, is the budget that the President has introduced. And I want to give this president his due. I come down here, and we saw it with the rule that I managed yesterday. We see it in some of the presentations on the other side of the aisle. You come down here, and it's as if the other side is just evil, and that's why nothing works. That's just not true at all. There are honest, hard-working men and women on both sides of this aisle who represent constituents back home who just have very different understandings of who we are as a people. Some of whom have different hopes and dreams about where we will go as a people, different needs that they're asking government to meet. This president got more done in the first 2 years of his term than most presidents get done in 8. He was incredibly effective. Now, I would argue he was incredibly effective at doing things that are destroying the very fabric of freedom in this country. But he was incredibly effective. Of course, he won with a majority of the vote here in this nation, Madam Speaker, and he's campaigning to win again this fall. Smart guy, effective guy, completely different understanding of who we are as a people and where we should go as a nation than the one that I have, but a talented politician nonetheless. He has honored his legal requirement to submit a budget to this Congress each and every year that he has been in office. And that's important because that distinguishes him from the United States Senate, which also has a legal obligation to submit a budget and has refused to do so for the last 3 years. Now, you wonder why it is we can't come together on funding priorities, Madam Speaker. 3 years the Senate has said, we're not going to tell you what we're interested in doing. We're not going to provide you with any ideas. And because we won't move it, the House product can't move, the President doesn't have anything to work with, and you see the kind of economic turmoil that we're in today. But the President, to his credit, has submitted a budget each and every year with his priorities. Well, this is the budget that he submitted for 2012. This was just last February. Law required it. He complied with it. But he's running for re-election. And he's got his pulse he's got his fingers on the pulse of the American people for what they need and what they desire and what they want from the United States government. Again, all tuned towards election in November. And the budget that he submitted raises taxes, as the gentleman from Virginia advocated, by $2 trillion on the American people. $2 trillion. Now, if you want to know how much a trillion is, Madam Speaker, I speak to a lot of school groups back home. We try to break down those zeros into things that matter. If you began on the day that Jesus Christ was born, and you wasted $1 million a day, 7 days a week, from the day Jesus Christ was born through today, you would have to throw away $1 million a day, every day, 7 days a week, for another 734 years to throw away your first $1 trillion. Your first. The President proposes to raise tax on the American people by $2 trillion. Folks say, Rob, we have debts. We have bills to pay. May have to raise taxes to do it, they say. He raises taxes by $2 trillion, but raises spending by even more. That's what we're talking about here, Madam Speaker. Here's the chart of the promises we've already made, the unsustainable path of spending that we have already committed to as a nation, spending that has to be reduced, spending that has to be cut, priorities that have to be reset and reorganized. And the President in his budget this year said not only are we going to spend all of that, we're going to spend $2 trillion more, such that we're going to tax the American people an additional $2 trillion, but we're going to raise the debt faster than if we hadn't have passed a budget at all. $2 trillion new dollars coming into the Treasury, but so much more new spending going out the door, the debt actually rises faster under the President's plan for 2013 and 14 and 15 and 16. It rises faster under the President's plan in 2017 and 18 and 19 and 20. You have to go all the way out, Madam Speaker, to 2021. I blew it up here on the chart because I know folks won't be able to see it back in their offices. 2021. Represented by this sliver of green way out there on the end of this chart that says if we agree to the President's budget and if we raise taxes by $2 trillion on the American people with all of this new spending that he would like to do as well, way out in 2021, we'll borrow just a little bit less money than if we'd done nothing at all. And I say that, Madam Speaker, because folks aren't here bickering over nothing. folks are up here advocating at the top of their lungs for their vision of America. The greatest experiment in the history of the world, Madam Speaker, where people would govern themselves, a republic as never before seen in world history. We started that republic here. We're maintaining that republic here. I would tell you we're duty-bound to pass that republic on, not just to our children and to our grandchildren, but for generations to come. But we have come to a nexus in our history where we disagree on who we are as a people. The President, incredibly effective, incredibly talented, running for re-election, trying to enunciate those hopes and dreams that the American people will respond to and endorse and re-elect him based on, believes that even with this crushing burden of debt, that every single economist agrees is unsustainable going into the future, advocates that over the next 10 years we do not one thing about it. In fact, we raise taxes by $2 trillion, we exacerbate it, and we make it worse. That's not who this House is, Madam Speaker. That's not why you and I ran for Congress. That's not why folks left their families. That's not why folks got off the sidelines and said, I can either stay at home and complain about it or I can run for Congress and do something about it. And we elected 99 new members in this House last fall. 99 new members, Republicans and Democrats coming from all walks of life to say we can do better. We can be a part of the solution. We don't have to point the finger of blame. We can actually put forward solutions. And we have. You know, again, you don't read that in the newspaper, Madam Speaker. It's no wonder folks are so disgusted with what happens in this town. Because when you read about what's happening in this town, it's pretty disgusting. I want to talk about some of the good news. I have 4 bars here, Madam Speaker. Fiscal year 2010, federal government discretionary spending, fiscal year 2011, fiscal year 2012, and fiscal year 2013. You know, this fiscal year 2010, Madam Speaker, that was money that was spent before you and I came to Congress. That was money that was spent while my Republican colleagues were in the minority, while we had Democrats running the White House and the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. There was one-party control. We had one-party Republican control from 2000 to 2006. We had one-party Democratic control from 2008 to 2010. Spending levels, discretionary spending. Folks say, Rob, doesn't all spending begin in the House? No, it does not. For the most part, the entire budget is, 2/3 of the budget is comprised of mandatory spending, spending that does not come through the House each and every year, but discretionary spending comes through the House. This $1.27 trillion comes through the House for us to make a decision on each and every year. Madam Speaker, you know the story, the decisions we've been making. When you and I arrived, we joined our senior Republican colleagues here. We created a majority, a new Republican majority here in this House. For FY 2011, the first year in which you and I served, we reduced spending. I'm not talking about Washington, D.C. funny math. I'm not talking about where you raise spending by $10 and call it a cut. I'm talking about actual U.S. dollars going out the door in discretional spending. When we came into this Congress and we took on FY 2011 appropriations, we reduced it from $1.27 trillion to $1.21 trillion, $64 billion less, not inflation adjusted, actual dollars, $64 billion less in 11 than in 12. You say, but Rob, that's not enough. You're absolutely right, it's not enough. We only have control over a small amount of the budget here. We're going to do what we can, when we can. We went on to 2012, reduced it again down to $1.18 trillion. Another $31 billion reduction. $31 billion is enough? No, of course it's not enough. Is the history in this country that we raise it and raise it and raise it? Yes, it is. Have we changed that history for the first time since World War II, Madam Speaker? You better believe it. It has not happened in this land since the end of World War II that a Congress year after year after year and now after year reduces the discretionary spending going out the door. Because it wasn't just that we spent less in 11 than we spent in 10. We spent less in 12 than we spent in 11. And with the bill that we passed on the floor of this House yesterday, We are now on track to spend less in 2013 than we spent in 2012. Now, just to be clear, Madam Speaker, we talk so much about what goes on here on the House floor. When I show you the path of fiscal despair that is ahead of us with this red line, the current path, if we do nothing, and I show you the green line, the solution that we proposed in this House, it's important to note that the green line is just what we've proposed. We've passed it in a bipartisan way. We've passed it twice in a bipartisan way, but the Senate's never taken it up. The President has promised he'd never implement it. It's something that we see as a vision of prosperity for this country, but we cannot get agreement from the Senate or the White House to implement. That idea is distinguished from what we've done with discretionary spending, where these bills have passed the House, have passed sometimes a kicking and screaming Senate, and have been signed into law by the President of the United States. This is not an aspirational goal that I have here, Madam Speaker. This is the law of the land. Madam Speaker, all the easy choices are gone. They were gone before you and I got here. They may well have been gone before our colleague from Indiana got here. The easy choices have all been made already. The only thing that's left are the hard choices. And, Madam Speaker, you know as well as I do, when we talk about cutting spending, when we talk about reducing the size and scope of the federal government, every dollar we spend comes from back home. Every dollar we spend comes out of the wallets of our constituents back home. We get to choose where we want to spend that money. As a voter back home, I can choose to send it to my city government, I can send it to my county government, I can send it to my state government, I can send it to my federal government. But who back home around the water cooler, around the coffee pot, says, golly, what we need in this country is efficiency and thrift. We want it done really well and really fast, and we want it done for the lowest possible price. Let's send it to Washington, D.C. and let them do it. I bet they'll get it right. Who says that? Nobody says that. Here we are trying to nationalize the entire health care system in this country in the name of efficiency and lower costs. No, we're not going to get it right. I say let's keep it in the hands of the private sector. Some folks may say give it to our city government. Some folks may say give it to our county government. Nobody says let's send it to Washington, D.C. So when we're making these reductions, when we're trying to be thrifty with the dollars that we have seized from American taxpayers out of their paychecks each and every month, there's not one anti-government advocate in this town. What there are good government advocates in this town. And whether you sit on the Republican side of the aisle or the Democratic side of the aisle, one thing on which we can all agree is the federal government has let us down. The gentleman from Virginia made a passionate case for why it is we need to fund green energy. I happen to have the largest manufacturer of high-efficiency solar panels in America. In my district, I believe in green energy. What I don't believe in is crony capitalism. That's what we saw in Solyndra. Crony capitalism, where the political contributors get the taxpayer dollars, where hundreds of millions of dollars can be wasted with no accountability whatsoever. That's not good for anyone. That's not good for the left. That's not good for the right. That is not good for a single American taxpayer. We're talking about good government here. Madam Speaker, I dare say as I look at this chart to my left of decreasing federal spending, actual dollars going down, not just for 1 year, not just for 2 years, but now for 3 years in a row, that would not have happened but for the American people speaking out in the 2010 election and sending 99 new members to this Congress. We had lots of members here who believe in thrift, who believe in efficiency, who believe in making sure the taxpayer gets their maximum value out of every tax dollar, but there were not enough. There were not enough. I can't tell you how many times from back home I'd watch the gentleman from Indiana alone as he advocated for good government, alone on the floor of the House, trying to make a difference. American people have sent 99 new faces here, new minds, new ideas. And it's made this difference. Madam Speaker, I don't have any idea how the next election is going to turn out, but I'm absolutely certain with every fiber of my being that we are going to have the largest voter turnout in American history come November 6th. And I know this. If there's one thing I trust in this country beyond the United States Constitution and the King James Bible, it's the American people. And when more Americans turn out in November than ever before to make a decision about who we are as a nation, where we're going as a nation, and who shall lead this nation, we're going to get it right. Don't have any idea which direction that's going to go. But I trust the American people. Madam Speaker, Newt Gingrich said it best when he was down in Georgia speaking during the presidential campaign. He said, "This year we do not need a presidential candidate we can believe in. We need candidates who believe in us." It's one of the distinguishing features on the floor of this House, Madam Speaker. Do you believe in the American people? Do you trust the American people? Do you know in your heart that the American people, left to their own devices, will get it right every time? Or do you believe they just can't handle it, and it's up to Washington, D.C. to solve those issues for them? We're going to find out on November 6th where the hearts and minds of the American people are, Madam Speaker. But you see on these charts behind us the kind of success that we can have as a nation, as a people, in turning the good ship America when the American people turn out to the polls and send back to Washington those folks who care more about the future of this country than they care about themselves. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Can you yield your time to me? Madam Speaker,
Under the Speaker.
I was going to say, Madam Speaker, would it be in order for the gentleman